So, welcome everybody to the White Rabbit podcast. And before we get started with today's episode, just a couple housekeeping tips. It's just me flying solo again today, since Albert is traveling. That's the first one. So it's just me flying solo. So today it's just me and Selim, our guest Selim. I'll bring him on in a second. And the second point of housekeeping is that I have a bit of a cold today. So if my voice sounds a little bit weird, that's why. And don't worry, I will mute my mic if I have to sneeze or blow my nose or something like that. I'll mute my mic because I don't want to blow out your eardrums with my crazy sounds. Okay, so with those points of housekeeping out of the way, let's dive right into our introduction. So our guest today is named Selim Selveroğlu. Selim, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay. And Selim lives in Istanbul, and he's a product line manager and consultant for Dell Technologies. And yes, that's Dell, the company that practically all of us have bought computers from at some point. But Selim is about a million miles away from that retail computer business. So don't think that we have found the one guy that can answer all of your laptop questions for you because Selim is not that guy. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to make clear that Selim is here today representing himself. He's not here representing the company Dell. So Selim, say hello to everyone and don't worry, they don't bite.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. So, hey everyone, if you're listening or watching to this, congratulations. You already made a better life choice than checking your email or Instagram for the 17th time today. And let's make it worth for your while. And who knows, maybe end of this, you might even forget where you left your phone.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Selim. So here's how I ran into Selim. Recently, we did another episode with Şebnem Dağ Güven, and Selim commented on one of the general themes that we touched on in that episode, which was the human tendency to forget about forget about the other person's perspective and to just do what I call puking. And note that that somewhat indelicate phrase is mine. It's not others' phrase. I don't want to make anyone answer for that. So what I mean by that, puking, what I mean by that is just to talk about yourself and think about what you need. And so that was one of the themes that Şebnem and I hit on in the recording, and Selim had some comments about that. Selim called this the me first strategy and talked about an alternative, which he was calling the connection first strategy. And that's where we'll start from a few moments from now. But first, Selim, what have I missed in the introduction here? What else should our listeners know about you?
Thank you very much, Matt. You covered almost all of them. But if I may add a little context beside my work in tech, I also run workshops on time management, presentation skills, and productivity. I love helping people craft messages for their presentations that actually stick and manage their time in a way that works for them rather than against them. And since I know the people struggling with making time for what truly matters, I've actually put together an online course called Faniler için Zaman Yaratma Rehberi. In English, translation is Making Time Guide for Mortals. It's all about practical, no-fluff strategies to take back the control of your schedule and actually get things done without burning out.
And also, Selim, one more thing, just so I don't forget this later. Tell our listeners if they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. I believe I shared my contact details below the screen, but my nickname is Entel Mühendis in Instagram, and they can reach out to me from my email address, selim@selveroglu.net, and also they can reach out to me from LinkedIn. So probably there is no person like my name and surname combination in LinkedIn or in Turkey.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you, Selim. And now let's dive right into our topics for today. And we'll start with the topic I brought up earlier in the introduction, Salim, you mentioned in those comments on LinkedIn, you mentioned the difference between the me first and connection first strategies. So let's back up a bit. And for the benefit of our listeners who have not had a chance to hear you talk about these things, tell us a little more about what you mean by these two phrases.
Yeah. So, what all we know that the most of the people in the world, if they are working for the sales in any kind of the company, they are running for a target. They would like to hit the quota. They would like to earn the money, earn the commission. That's totally normal. But when they are doing that, sometimes, or maybe most of the times, they are forgetting to connect with the customer. So what I mean that there's an old advertising rule states that you need to explain not just the benefit, but also what makes it beneficial. So, for example, if they're trying to sell a product and the product has lots of great feature set, and one of the feature of the product, it can fly. And when they are doing the customer call or sending email or talking with the customer face to face, they are saying that, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, our product also fly, but our competitors cannot fly. That's good.
Uh-huh.
That's good because they would like to make the sales with a great feature of that product, but they are not thinking that, hey, is this customer really wants a product which can fly? No, most of the time, no. And as we know well, we cannot directly control the purchase decision of a customer. So it's a decision, lots of decision makers, and we are doing our sales pitch. But I heard a couple of months ago from a podcast, person called Dan Martell. He has a book, Buy Back Your Time, and he said that control the controllables, which I love that quote. Control the controllables.
Ooh, that's a good phrase.
Yeah, and the people, if they are trying to sell something or they are trying to communicate with somebody, hey, what can I control? I can control my sales pitch. I can control my words. I can control a little bit my emotions, but I cannot control the purchase decision of the customer. And I always give this example. It's not my own original quote that I heard somewhere else, that for the connection we need to listen first, and because of this reason we have 2 ears and just only a mouth.
This is a very interesting point for many reasons, but one of them, or what was that phrase? Control the controllables?
Control the controllables.
Control the controllables, because a lot of presentation training is about, I guess you could say, the false dream of influence. It's thinking that if you use just the right words, then you can get anybody to do anything. But that is totally not what is being said here. It's that you need to talk to this person and find out what this person already wants to do. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, correct. So let me give you an example from Turkish culture. Most of the time, let me give an example for conversation between two person. So one of them calling or talking each other face to face. Hey, I have a terrible headache. Another one says, hey, do you know what? You should buy this medicine or take this medicine, or you should drink this one, that one, yada, yada, yada. Okay, first of all, this suggestion or recommendation is not coming from a doctor, because this person who is doing this recommendation doesn't have any medical licenses, and he or she is answering or replying from his or her perspective, and this medicine X worked for her and or him, so it can work for other person. And on the other hand, the person who is suffering headaches, maybe he or she wants to just share his headache problem or her headache problem. He or she doesn't seeking a solution from you. Maybe something else. Maybe he or she wants to talk with someone, and maybe he or she wants to explain why he or she is having this terrible headaches, maybe because of boss, because of husband, wife, friend, whatever. But what we are doing, what I observe mainly that we stop that conversation and giving them advice.
Mhm.
And we are not asking ourselves, hey, this person is asking it really advice, or he or she wants to just only share and to be heard.
Yeah. Why do you think that humans seem to have so much difficulty with this? Why do you think that me first is the default human approach, whereas connection first is a higher level communication skill that needs to be learned? Why do you think that is?
Well, what I read from books or watched from YouTube videos, the answer is hidden in the neuroscience.
Tell me more.
What I heard from, yeah, sure. What I see and heard and read from the books that our brain, human brain, needs lots of energy.
Okay.
And most of the cases, we are doing unconscious decisions. Because, for example, when we are driving car, we always use the same route. When we are going somewhere by walk, we are almost using same route. And when we are replying somebody, we are most of the cases using same words because it is easier. And in the energy perspective of the brain, it's cheaper because you don't need to use any energy because it's replying by automated system. But for the communication first strategy, we need to stop and think a moment, which is very hard, especially these days, because we need to be fast. We need to act fast. We need to reply fast. The people are demanding fast replies from us. I don't know why, but it is what it is, what I observe. Of course, it's my personal point of view.
Yeah. So let me see if I'm hearing you correctly. So basically, you're saying since the human brain, because it sounds like the human brain is kind of lazy. The human brain, or it's a resource hog. It's using a lot of resources. That would be the more charitable way to put it. So the human brain is a resource hog. It's using a lot of resources. It's trying to cut back on the number of resources that it's using. And so basically, it's cutting corners. And one of the things that it can do in cutting corners is default to the thoughts that it naturally is having already. And a lot of those thoughts have to do with me, me, me. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And which is totally understandable. Again, the brain doesn't want to spend too much energy.
Okay.
We need to push it, but again, maybe if I read from the correct sources, this information, that what they said, there is some conscious part of the brain, some unconscious part of the brain. So if I'm not mistaken, Daniel Kahneman said that it's system 1 and system 2. System 1 is automated decisions. So and we are not thinking what we are doing, for example, brushing teeth, or again, going somewhere which we went before, so we are using same route again, so we don't need to think about it, and it's easy and don't require too much energy.
And this sounds like it would segue nicely maybe into something else that you wanted to cover today. One thing that you mentioned was the importance of asking the right questions instead of just looking for answers. And when I saw that, I was like, I wonder what Selim means by that. So what do you mean by that?
Well, again, let me give an example from a book. I don't know if you ever chance to read that Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad and Poor Dad book.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So he is giving this example that so in this book, I don't want to give full information from the book, of course.
Sure.
So it's the people needs to read it. It's very beautiful. It's a very great book, and he's giving this example from if somebody says that, let's say they would like to buy some watch, some pen or book, whatever, and if seems too expensive to them, they only said that, hey, I cannot afford it.
Uh-huh.
And now you are stopping yourself. You are not thinking. You are stop.
Yeah.
I cannot afford it. Stop.
Uh-huh.
But Robert Kiyosaki says that if you change it and ask the correct question, which is, how can I afford it? Now your brain starts thinking to ways to earn money for or get money from somewhere to afford this pen, paper, phone, watch, whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, and this for the example, for the customer example, hey, what questions should I ask to the customers to make a sales pitch? And we need to change the roles, which means we need to think about that.
Interesting.
We need to change the seat. We need to change the other side. We need to change our position to other side of the table, customer part. And hey, what should I ask? Which questions should I ask to the customers? And the other thing that it is, maybe you know that from, I cannot remember which book that I heard that 5 whys.
Yeah.
Why question.
Uh-huh.
It's coming from Toyota, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Toyota factory. If there is some problem on manufacturing and there is, I don't know, maybe some accident, etc., and they're asking without judging that, hey, why this accident happened? And they said, hey, the workers are working 18 hours a day. Okay. And second, why they are working 18 hours a day? And because we don't have enough workers. And okay, why we don't have enough workers? So they minimum 3 or 5 why questions. They are trying to find the root cause of the problem.
Yeah.
So when we are doing a presentation or doing sales pitch, first of all, it's very easy question. But most of the time, also I am forgetting to ask myself, hey, why I am doing this? It's a very magical question.
Yeah. When and also I think that maybe it ties back to what you were talking also about the me first and the connection first strategy, because those strategies are about the brain trying to cut corners, the brain trying to use cached information, what I call cached information, like an internet browser caches information. So if the human brain is trying to cut down on its energy expenditure, so it's trying to cache information, and if you try to control, I'm thinking back here to your mention of Dan Martell and control. What was that phrase? Control the controllables?
Yes, correct.
And if you're trying to control the conversation, your brain your lazy brain likes it because it kind of knows what the answers are going to be. You know, the answers are they come from a finite set. They might be A, they might be B, they might be C, they might be D, but they're going to be between A and D. Whereas if you're just kind of asking a question, you're giving up control and you're letting the other person say what's on their mind, basically, right? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, and now you are starting a connection with the other person. So you are shaking hands. So and because you're asking, hey, how can I help you? What is your pain point? Whatever. So you are trying to go there and sitting next to that person, not in front of the person. So they are not playing chess. Sorry, you are not playing chess with him. You need to be next to him. You are. So when you're asking correct questions, and maybe you don't need to mention about your product is also flying.
True. Okay, and one other topic that I wanted to hit today was you mentioned the phrase constructing and delivering messages effectively in a world overloaded by information. What did you mean by that?
So let me give you an interesting statistics. I read a book, I cannot remember the source, sorry, but the average person in 1986 and exposed to an amount of information equivalent that 40 newspaper for day. 40.
Okay.
in 1986. I'm old enough to remember.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And by 2007, not to date, only 2007, this number had increased 174 newspapers per day.
No way.
Which means we are trying to drink water from a fire hose.
Wow. And this is back in 2007. And so tell me those numbers again. 1986 and 2007. What were those numbers?
1986, it is equals 40 newspaper,
Okay.
4040,
Uh-huh.
and 2007, 174
Wow.
newspapers.
That increase right there would be mind blowing. And then we've got whatever happened since 2007. And that was like, well, how long ago was that? That was like 21 years ago.
Yeah,
Wow. This
probably
so,
it's 300, maybe more. I don't know.
yeah. So tell me more about this. How can we
Yeah.
construct and deliver messages effectively in a world like this?
Yeah, so I always, when I'm talking with the people about the presentation, how to convey the message, how they construct the message correctly, and I'm giving this example that it is very easy to graduate from medical school or MBA without taking a class in communication, or how should you teach people a subject. And we, in the public relations, they are talking about the sender, recipient, message, but most of the time they are not discussing how should the message constructed. And I called, I again read in somewhere else, and they called is a curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
So, for example, I know my topic very well, and I learned it in years and years, and I don't know, I don't have any information that people who's listening me that I don't know, or I don't have any recollection that what does it mean they don't know this one. So let me give you an example. Maybe it will construct better. So one of my friends is doing cloud telephony operation.
Okay.
So the companies doesn't need to do investment to their location. They can get cloud telephony from anywhere else, anywhere in the Turkey from a company.
Sure.
He was, and she was talking about software is an SBC, Session Border Controller.
Okay.
And she was talking about that. I have to know that SBC. Hey, I don't know what SBC means because I'm not in the cloud telephony world.
Sure.
And, I checked back I Googled it and I read some couple of articles, etc. And I understood that. And I turned back to her. Hey, if you are talking with a customer, no idea what SBC means, you should give this example. If you remember good old times with the landlines telephony, maybe 1950s or 60s, and there are operators in central places, they are connecting you from removing a jack and putting another jack. And now you are connected with the other person. What SBC basically do is similar thing. If you give this example, people will understand. What about that?
True.
And if maybe you remember the Einstein's the quote: "If you cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself."
I love that one. Okay, so before we wrap up, today, let's
and my former manager of mine once. I lost you, I believe.
Yeah, we had a connection problem there for a moment, but I was just thinking before we wrap up for the day, let's give people something tangible that they can use in their lives. So let's say, for example, I am working somewhere and my boss says I need you to give a presentation tomorrow. So tomorrow I need to give a presentation. And I think, well, this idea that I've heard from Selim, this sounds really interesting, and I'd like to work this into my presentation tomorrow. So what's one thing that I can do just kind of as a simple basic starter to get going down this road of using this me first versus connection first strategy?
Well, so there are lots of steps for building a presentation, of
Mhm.
course, but I will give you a couple of tricks. So,
Okay.
first of all, you need to attract people,
Okay.
and it's important to start with the great entry. So,
Okay.
people need to remember something because if you lost in the starter, if you lose the people in first 90 seconds, you're doomed. They won't listen. They will look their smartphones.
Yeah. That's one phrase that I've heard you use is using hooks to capture attention. So is that what you mean here? And,
Yeah. For
and
example, I'm giving from one of my presentations. So, as my work still working in Dell, I'm doing presentations to the
yeah.
salespeople and the customers, etc.
Uh-huh.
And when I start my presentation, I am not starting with the good old, "Hey, this is my product, this do yada yada yada." No, I start with the quiz and say
the quiz.
yeah,
Right. Tell me.
yeah. And I am asking, hey, do you know bytes? And I started with if you add 3 zeros to the 1, it is kilobyte. And of course, it is not, by the way. But it's not for ease of understand. It should be 1024, but for
Sure.
ease to understand,
Sure.
it is 3 zeros, it's kilobyte. And if you
Sure.
add 3 zeros more, it's megabyte. And I start adding 3 zeros to the 1 and megabyte, terabyte, petabyte, whatever, and asking to the audience. And if they know the answer, I am giving them a small chocolate. If it is that audience. And also after that, I am giving some statistics about how data is growing and from daily life. For example, each of us generating 146 gigabyte data every day, etc., etc. So that is first, I capture the retention first 90 seconds. And also it's very important to end of the end of the presentation. So starting and ending the entrance and leaving the stage, it's two important parts of a presentation.
And one thing that that you mentioned earlier in the recording, you mentioned the curse of knowledge and overcoming the curse of knowledge. And it strikes me that this quiz that you are talking about, this example that you're giving of bytes and, 1,000 bytes and 10,000 or whatever, 3 zeros and then 6 zeros and then 9 zeros and terabytes and blah, blah, blah. These are very, I mean, this is not a complicated quiz that you're giving and there's chocolates. So this sounds like it would be a really good step towards the speaker overcoming the curse of knowledge. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. And also what I am try to do for not affected by curse of knowledge, I am try to give them, if it's very complicated topic, I try to give them from the daily life examples.
Okay.
For example, one of my doctor gave me this example, which is very easy to understand for not consuming fast food. And he told me that, hey, okay, let's imagine you have a great sports car. And do you buy and fuel from the place that you don't know and it's very bad quality, or maybe do you want to add some shampoo inside of that great sports car as a fuel? I said, no, I don't want to. Okay. And he asked me this question. Why are you doing it to yourself?
Ooh,
with fast food?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Good question. Good point. Good way to make a point.
Yeah, exactly. So these kind of things that helps to achieve or helps to not affect it from the curse of knowledge.
And one other thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, you mentioned that this quiz that you gave an example of, you mentioned that you do something like this using a hook somehow. You mentioned that you do this at the beginning of the presentation, which I understand, but you also mentioned that you advocate doing it at the end of the presentation too. And I haven't heard that as much. Can you, why do you do that?
Great question. So, because the people most of the time remember the great entrance and great finish.
Okay.
great wrap up.
Uh-huh.
In the middle of the presentation, most of the time they don't remember it. So, but
True.
when you start with the effective entrance and effective wrap up, so that will be very good at it. And in this my quiz, I am holding one last question. I'm saying that, hey, and do you know what this is? And said, most of the time they don't know because it is 30 zeros after the one.
Yeah.
Please hold that thought till the end of this presentation. I will give you this answer.
Ooh. So the beginning of the presentation actually ties to the quiz at the end of the presentation. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. And I'm doing it on purpose because people wants to get answers. Where most of the time we are watching the some crime movies or TV shows because they are making deliberate or they are making a little bit small gaps in the story. They are not giving the answers from the first episode. So you are and you want to, okay. What is who is the killer? I need to find it. And it is, I'm using the same technique that, hey, I am putting a gap, with this question's answer, and people most of the time waiting to answer this last question. And sometimes if I forget it, somebody asking, hey, what was the question? What was the answer of the last question?
That's what you want. You want people who, even at the end, like instead of sleeping or scrolling through Facebook or something, you want people who are paying attention to what you're saying. This is a great idea.
Just one additional information. Most of the time we believe that we are multitaskers. So we do the two things at the same time. No, we are not.
Yeah. Ooh.
Our brain doesn't work like that.
True.
Sorry. If you are talking with someone on the phone, you cannot listen to other person properly. So I give almost always this example. When you're in the high school and you are talking with your BFF next to you, and the teacher is telling something and you probably miss it, and when the teacher realizes you are not listening and stop talking and, hey, what was I talking about? Asking you because you are talking each other.
Yeah. This reminds me of a great quote from Blair Enns. Are you familiar with that name, Blair Enns? Blair Enns.
No, sorry.
Blair Enns is, I don't know. Comes from the world of selling creative services or something like that. So anyway, my point is that he's got this great quote that says, what does he say? You can be present or you can give a presentation, but you cannot do both at the same time.
Wow, that's great.
So anyway, on that note, so we need to wrap it up for today. So I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast today, Selim.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was an honor. It was first time for being a guest in a podcast for me.
Excellent. Well, so thanks again for coming, and we'll wrap it up here. And I'll find out where Alper is traveling to next, and we'll try to catch him on one of these days when he's not traveling, so he can record with us. So thank you very much for listening in today, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.